You're listening to Smark To Death Radio.
The wait for live pro wrestling is over, and the fight for our first responders has just begun. Saturday, July 11th, Synergy Pro Wrestling and Wrestling News World team up to bring you a massive benefit live pro wrestling event for the first responders, live on Fight TV. The greatest rivalry in independent wrestling continues as Alex Zane meets Blake Christian in a 30-minute Iron Man main event match. 2 qualifying matches for the prestigious Garden State Invitational Tournament will go down as former WWN champion J.D. Drake meets the unpredictable Tony Deppen, and the Ace of Space LSG collides with the clout cutter Jordan Oliver. Synergy champion Frightmare and the former Amasis Deshaun Pratt meet in a very unconventional fashion. It's a Frightmare on Pratt Street. Plus, Brandon Kirk, MV Young, Matt McIntosh, and the rest of your Synergy favorites. It all happens to benefit our first responders, live streaming on Fight TV July 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern. For more information, log on to synergywrestling.com or visit Wrestling News World.
Hey everybody, it's the interview queen Alicia Toot here, and you are currently listening to and obviously enjoying Queen's Court.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of Queen's Court with your girl, the Queen of NE, right here on Smark To Death Radio. And we have the 8th installment of my favorite series, Queeny Suggests. And for the first time in all 8 episodes, I'm bringing on a bestie. I'm bringing on my favorite person to chat just basically anything with, but mostly the fact that I stan our friendship so much that I love to talk about, I think, anything under the sun. And this is, of course, the one, the only, Josh Robinson. Hey, buddy.
Hello. I also echo that. I stan our friendship. Even though we're on 2 different sides of the world, and usually when you're asleep, I'm awake, or vice versa, but it's fine.
It's fine. It works when we chat in the interim.
Yeah,
Josh
anytime we get to chat, I am in the future. It is currently Monday morning here on the 22nd, and yes, before you ask, 2020 is still a freaking nightmare.
What a freaking nightmare. And I'm super glad that you agreed to do this episode with me. We had something else planned, which will happen maybe sometime in July. But right now, I really just want to celebrate some positivity. And what better person than you, Josh? And cue the Britney Spears gif of obviously.
Obviously. I'm in a, like, you can probably hear it in the sound of my voice. I'm in a very positive, I'm always fairly positive, but especially after this couple of days, I know the wrestling world's in a bit of a shitstorm, to say the least, but I'm feeling great, personally.
I know, buddy, and I'm super proud of you, and I'm so glad that you're feeling good right now, and the outpouring of love and support for you had to have felt really good. So we should start there. You're feeling good, pal.
I am. I've never felt more loved in my entire life, and I've never just felt more, obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, I guess I can fill you in briefly. Last, I don't even know when it was, Thursday night, my time, I did come out, something that I've been wanting to do for, last at least year, just wanting to kind of, I don't know, it's cheesy. I know this is going to sound really cheesy, Queen, but just be myself. So
yes, buddy.
I've had 99% a very positive experience with this. I know everyone's different, but my experience has been pretty good, and I've just had a lot of love and a lot of support. Because you always think the worst with those kind of things, and I feel happy. I'm still a little it's still a little awkward, I guess would be the word. Because it's like you're so used to that repressive feeling of just like, okay, anytime someone brings up something around this subject, you're like, okay, just defend. And kind of, I guess, in a weird way, lie about some things, or just, withhold the truth, I guess you could say. So it's weird to talk about it openly with people, even at work and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, I can talk about this now, and everyone around me is supporting me, which is really nice, I guess.
Yes, it is very nice, and it's a wonderful thing. And what better for Pride Month, honey, than this?
I know. I didn't even plan it, guys. Everyone's like,
I know.
Pride Month, and I'm like, I honestly didn't even plan. I didn't even realize it when I did it. I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, Pride Month and all of this. So I'm like, now I can openly just be. I'm still the same moron as I was last week, but I just can be openly Josh, I guess.
Yes, you can be openly Josh, and you can live your truth and your happiness. And we, as your friends, couldn't be more happy for you. So welcome to this amazing new chapter in your life. And what better way to start?
That rainbow flag, rainbow flag and the Aussie flag side by side.
Perfect. See, that's what I'm saying. What better way to start than to do that? It's the best. I'm so excited, and I'm super happy to have you here to chat a little bit for Queeny Suggests. Now, everybody who knows me knows that I put you over a lot, and yes, it's because we're friends, but also because I love your content. But before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about your wrestling fandom. So, other than the Iconics, which, if anybody knows you, is all over your Twitter.
Yes.
What is it that specifically brought Josh into wrestling?
Specifically, my older brother. My older brother is the 100% reason I watch wrestling. Is that my brother is 7 years older than me, so there's a I would call that a fair age gap. He's the oldest of us. I'm the second oldest in our line. But there is a fairly big age gap. So, when I was a kid, he was, when I was 5, 6, 7, he was going into his teens. So he was finding wrestling and discovering all of that. And of course, I just wanted to be like my older brother. When you're a kid, you're very impressionable. So I was like, if he watches wrestling, then I watch wrestling. So he's the specific reason that I got kind of, I guess, sucked into the world of wrestling. But wrestling is silly at heart. I think it's, and I mean that in a good way. Wrestling is kind of silly. And I think that's what kind of drew me in, to be completely honest, was that kind of, it's so over the top and wrestling is so extra. As a kid, I don't know, I guess it's different for everyone, Queenie, but as a kid, you don't really focus on like who can do a good wrist lock and who can do a good Hurricane Runner. You focus on the kind of wackiness of wrestling, like who's doing what. And especially we all as kids watch WWE for the most part. It's that over the top story that kind of drew me into wrestling. And I guess the wrestling as I got older kept me there. But that's what specifically got me in, was that it was just so silly and so over the top.
And so fun. You're a story-driven person, and we've talked about this several times, and I think that especially when we're younger, that's a selling point. We don't know technical moves. Like, wow, they just did this really cool flippy move, which in some cases I still say today, because I don't know what they're all called. I just can't do it. Can't keep up with that. But there's something about it that brings you in. It's the theatricalness. It's what's going on backstage, and what are they going to come out with this time, and why is there a giant chicken, and there's so many things
legit,
going on. Yeah, for real. And it's so funny to kind of watch our fandom grow over the years as we age. And you touched on it. You said the move sets now and the actual wrestling becomes more apparent for us because we're paying more attention to that per se. But what is it about wrestling, I guess, that's keeping you the most engaged and involved?
Not to be all deep and weird, but I think wrestling is one of the only things in my life that is constantly there. I've said this many times, and I know a lot of people aren't the same, but I've never taken a break from wrestling. Wrestling's always been there through ups, downs. Wrestling is the one thing that can kind of, I think we all look in a certain way, Queen, we want to be a kid again. And I think wrestling has moments, no matter what company you're watching, where it can kind of take you out of where you are and just be 10 years old in front of a screen again. I think anyone would, if you could pay to do that, you would do it. So I think wrestling is one of the only things that kind of keeps that kind of child alive. So I think that's what's keeping me there, is that ability that it's consistently there, and it's just something. It's a schedule, Queen. It can keep you on kind of track of like, yes, your week can be a bit weird, but like every, well, for me, Tuesday morning, I can watch Raw, and I know that that's consistently always on.
Always.
Yeah.
It's like old reliable.
Mm-hmm.
You
it's
always
a security
know what you're
blanket,
going to do.
Isn't it?
Sure.
It's a blanket.
Yeah, it is. It is. And especially if you haven't, but especially for those of us who don't watch weekly sometimes, and we step away for a little while, you don't realize kind of how much you relied on, back in the day before they went to Fridays. Okay. Right. Mondays were Raw. Tuesdays were SmackDown.
Yep.
And then I had NXT to watch. Right. That's kind of the schedule. And now that they've moved, it's like, well, there's Raw on Monday, NXT on Wednesday, SmackDown on Friday, and then of course we have AEW on Wednesday. We have all these other different promotions running around.
There's wrestling on every day at this point.
I feel like exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely has changed quite a bit, and the offerings that we get. But you're right about the schedule. There's something kind of comforting about the fact that I know, for me, on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern, I know Raw's going to be on. Right?
Exactly.
So I'm like, yeah, okay. And it kind of gives you that little comfort and nostalgia as well, which I totally hear. Yeah. When you were kind of growing up with your brother there and starting to kind of dive into wrestling, who are your like early favorites? Who are the people that you gravitated to the most?
As a kid, Rob Van Dam was always someone that I just loved, because he was a dude. He was just such a dude. I didn't know what he was doing in his extra spare time when I was a kid. I didn't know what that was at 10 years old, but he was just a dude. RVD, Jeff Hardy, Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus was always someone that I loved. I've always loved the women. I always just love, I guess, Shawn was someone that I just love genuinely because he was so fun. Especially, I grew up in the Ruthless Aggression era. That's my time. So when was Shawn ever a heel? He was, he was always a babyface. As a kid, I always loved babyface. Goldust. I tell you what, Queen, that was my first ever favorite wrestler, was Goldust.
Yes.
It was my first. Dylan, always, my older brother, Dylan. If you remember anyone, I don't know if you do, Queen, but anyone listening remembers the old wrestling games on PlayStation 1, like Warzone and Attitude and all of those games, I used to always pick Goldust. I don't know why, but he was just he was my first favorite wrestler. And then it was Jericho and RVD, Shawn, Jeff Hardy. They're the ones I kind of, growing up in that, 2002 to like 2005 kind of era, as kind of growing into my 10, 11, 12. That's where my head was at, definitely, was those guys and girls.
Yeah, that's a good choices there, buddy. But what about now? What about in this terrible, horrible year? I'm just going to pretend it's 2019.
So much better, isn't it? Who do you love
the most right now? Obviously, we know one answer is coming.
We know the Iconics. They're like my everything in wrestling. Everyone knows that. That's no surprise.
Sure.
I'm a big Finn Balor guy. More so maybe last year than maybe. He's kind of fallen off a little bit, but I love Finn Balor. Sami Zayn is another one that I was just like, I just want the world for him. I love Sami Zayn. Rhea's an obvious answer as well. I understand that, but I've kind of, it's weird. Like, you go through and you're like, who's your favorite wrestlers? And it's like, I don't know, because like I always have like, I've fallen off of so many. I used to love Sasha Banks and stuff like that, but even I've drifted from her in the last 2 or 3 years, and it's just Sammy, Finn. I love Cross, Killer Cross, Karrion Kross, whatever you want to call him. I've just become enamored with him as someone who I'm very open about the fact that I purely am mainly a WWE guy with, I see other things here and there. Cross is one of those guys that I've seen in Impact and I've seen on the indies because he's just, he no pun intended, he crosses over because he's so good. And him and Scarlett have just captured my attention. I love Johnny Gargano and Candice. I think they're great. And I think another obvious answer, I think, is the best wrestler in the world today is Io Shirai. I think she is the best. Male or female, it doesn't matter to me. She's just, I know it's arguable and it's subjective, but I think she is the best wrestler in the world. And Charlotte Flair, because I love Charlotte Flair.
Yes, you do. And that's great. As long as she's not your favorite queen. Okay, buddy.
She's not my favorite. She's a queen, but she's not the queen. You know what I mean?
Right, buddy.
But Iconics, I mean, sorry everybody else, but they're just, you know how I feel about the Iconics.
I do know how you feel about the Iconics. Oh my gosh. Those are all great people, and it makes me smile a lot to hear how much you love these performers, and it feels good, you know. It feels nice, especially right now, to have some positivity. Yes. But of course, you love wrestling so much, and it's been a part of your life for pretty much your entire life, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But you know, you've translated this love of wrestling into creating, you know, podcasts and content. But not everything that you have and not everything that you do and give is wrestling related necessarily. And right. I think that that's really cool about what you have created, which is the Josh Robinson00 Network. Now, wasn't always a thing. So let's take us through a little bit about how this network came to be and the shows that are on it.
Yeah, so I've been, slight background, I've been podcasting for nearly 2 years. In July, it'll be 2 years since I started Wrestling Reverb, and I was just kind of, honestly, just looking for a place just to kind of vent my feelings about wrestling, because there's not a lot of people around me that are watching wrestling. So I was like, let's just talk and see what happens. Of course, as you know, Queen, podcasting is just like you're talking to nobody for the longest time and you just kind of speaking into a microphone and then seeing what happens. And for the first 6 months or so, that's exactly what was happening with me. I'm just like, okay, I'm just doing this for myself. And then you meet members of the wrestling community and you kind of, you get more ears listening to you. So I was doing Wrestling Reverb, and I've always, you've known this, I think ever since I've known you, Queen, I like to talk about other things that aren't wrestling, because there is more to life than wrestling. As much as we love wrestling, and it's the reason why we're doing any of this, there is more to life. I like Star Wars. I like video games. I like food, because I love food. I like just to talk about life. Like, I'm fairly open, obviously. I'm fairly open with everything, and I just... I started the Josh Robinson show. Well, diving in originally was just to talk to, people like yourself and talk about wrestling fans, but stuff that isn't wrestling. And that was good. Went into the Josh Robinson show. That's what it kind of formed into, just the show about anything. And I was like, I've always had it in the, with Brainbuster and everything that happened there. I like the idea of a collective of podcasts, not necessarily just different podcasters, but just a different group of shows where, I could have the opportunity to kind of talk about other stuff and not talk about wrestling, because it can get stale. Wrestling can get stale. So like anything, if you talk about it too much, it becomes kind of, it just becomes routine, and it kind of just feels like you're just talking about wrestling because that's what you're doing. That's what you're kind of pigeonholed into. And if you know me, you know that I don't like to be pigeonholed. I like to be myself, and I like to just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Really. I've always been, I'm not afraid of quote unquote failing. I'm just kind of like, let's just see what works. And if it doesn't, then on to the next thing. So to be honest and fair, I've had the idea for doing a network of sort, basically, just after Brainbuster had come to an end. And it was just kind of figuring out the best way to do it, because it is frightening, because you've built up such a following with just, in my case, just Reverb. So I'm just like, well, do people really want to hear me talk about anything else other than wrestling? And can I keep things interesting enough? Do I know about other topics enough? Because we're all kind of like encyclopedias of wrestling. We can kind of be like, yeah, we know this, but it's like other stuff. It's like, well, what do I know? I don't know what else I'm good for here. So, it was just setting up and making sure that if I did a network, I did it right. And I would like to say, humble brag, that I made sure that when I started it, I was aware of what I was doing and I was prepared for what I was doing. So that would be how the kind of the starting up story was. Just basically, I wanted to have a group of shows where I could invite people that aren't. I know lots of people now on my Twitter feed that I talk to on a regular basis that don't watch wrestling, and that's fine. Not everybody I talk to has to know what wrestling is. So that was mainly what the Josh Robinson show is become, and Brothers by Law with my actual brother-in-law, or soon-to-be brother-in-law, Ryan. And yes, he's a wrestling fan, but we don't really talk too much about. I know we just had a wrestling episode, but
you did. So that's okay.
But we talk about. You've seen all the episodes I do with Ryan, and it's video games and it's movies and just talking about other stuff where it's like, if you're not a wrestling fan, it doesn't really matter. So that was really the start of it. Was like, Reverb's my baby. You know that, Queen. Yeah. Reverb is my baby.
100 episodes, by the way. Congrats.
Yes. I was like, what the hell? 100 episodes? What the hell? But just talking about other stuff. So, giving myself an excuse to have more shows on one feed, kind of keep everything streamlined and then keep the train moving without necessarily always having to talk about wrestling. And then inviting people like Ditz to do Ditz versus Josh, and having guests on like yourself, Queen, and just, I don't know, doing something, I don't know. I find it's fairly unique. There's not really too many people that have 4 shows and are able to keep them all different.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. And what's interesting and I think unique about what you offer is that when you see something like a collective of podcasts like Brainbuster was, and like I'm on and Smark To Death Radio, it's
congratulations,
different.
by the way. I know I keep saying that, but Smark To Death have a good group of people.
I feel like I'm amongst wrestling elite here.
Yes.
it's unbelievable. They're absolutely wonderful. But when you see something like that, to me, it's totally different voices and it's totally different perspectives, which is what you give. But not everybody has a network where there's kind of one central person on everything in there, and it's run by you. And that I think is really special because you get to do so many different things. You just had that great episode about Black Lives Matter, which was awesome. Ditz versus Josh is very unique and fun. And I know that there's like a competitive nature to that one. So that's really cool. And then Reverb is Reverb with Kev, and shout out to, that show because that's my favorite show. No offense to all your other shows, but that's my favorite show. And then you have Brothers by Law. So like, I find that, you are at the center of these shows, but it's a different part of Josh every single time. And that I think makes you unique in that way. And I wondered if that was kind of your goal with creating this.
Yeah. I don't know. I jokingly put myself over all the time with you. But I find it really awkward to talk about myself that way. If other people want to say that, of course, I always thank you. Like, that's very kind of you to say. But I've always just seen myself as just a kid from a small town in Australia that just likes to talk about life. I always pride myself on the Josh Robinson show because I can talk about stuff like Black Lives Matter and show a bit of a different side. I am a fun person. I am a fairly positive person, but life does happen. And I like to talk about that kind of stuff on that show. And, just different aspect, like you said, showing off different kinds of flavors of who I am as a person, because there's all these pieces that make who you are. So I guess it wasn't the goal per se, but it's just kind of fell into my lap that way. And it's like kind of made me known for being a little bit unique, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely stand out, which I think is awesome. And definitely not in a negative way, but in a good way, because you have so many things that you can do. We always say all the time is, there's something for everybody. And sometimes people just like right now, I don't want to listen to any wrestling shit this week. I just don't. Like, I love all my friends and I'm very happy for y'all putting out shows, but I ain't tuning in right now. I'll catch up later. And sometimes I just want to hear something different from my friend's perspective. And that's why I love listening to your stuff. And I wondered too, now that this has been under your belt for a little while now, what's been the best part about starting your own network?
Oh God. It's weird when you ask that, because it's like, we live in a world, I think we live in just a society that moves so quickly. Sure. We're constantly we're never actually living right now. We're always thinking about tomorrow instead of, what's happening. Well, at least I do. And I know a lot of society does, is we're so worried about what's going on tomorrow that we're not even processing what's happening today. Mm-hmm. So when you actually think back and you go, oh, what have I think the coolest part for me is just being able to kind of branch out and do things that are kind of a little bit uncomfortable for me, where I don't necessarily have that much knowledge on. Like, for example, like Ryan is why I am an encyclopedia of wrestling in a lot of ways. He is an encyclopedia of video games. So when I talk about video games, I feel out of my element. I love them to bits, but I don't know what I'm talking about. He's kind of my backbone, and I'm learning. I feel like when you're passionate about something, you're always learning. And I'm always learning. Podcasting isn't just talking into a microphone. Twitch streaming isn't just playing a game and talking into a microphone. There is elements to it, and there's layers to it, and there's understanding. You've got to worry about so many different things and keeping yourself interesting, keeping your voice sounding interesting. Because if you sound bored, then the listener sounds bored. That's how I always treat podcasting or Twitch streaming or whatever I'm doing. So learning is a big thing for me, is learning from Ryan, learning from how Ditz does things, because Ditz has a different method of recording and doing stuff than how I do, than how you do. We all do things differently. I know a lot of people are like, it's not just talking to me. There is more to it. So learning from Ditz, and then learning solo shows are incredibly hard.
Yes.
They're incredibly hard
I
to
admire
do.
you for that.
And I find it's a challenge for me every week, if I don't have a guest on the Josh Robinson show, to talk on my own and to keep it interesting. I like that challenge. So challenging myself. I think that's been the biggest thing from starting this, is that I've got to keep it up consistently, and that I'm challenging myself to do other things, because I don't want to get bored with this thing. I love podcasting or Twitch streaming, and Twitch streaming is another thing that I find incredibly difficult, because retaining a live audience is hard. But when you get 10, 15, 20 viewers, you're like, holy shit, I got 10 people watching me. That's amazing. Like, I find that challenge, like giving myself a goal to be like, I want to get this, I want to do this, I want to do this. That's exciting for me. I think if I just stayed with just doing reverb, I would have gotten bored. And you would have noticed that in my show, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that as a podcaster and content creator. If you aren't happy, fix it. Or get rid of it. Whatever works for you, do it. Because then, you don't find anything negative about something you're so passionate about, right? As soon as you see something and you don't like it, change it. And I feel like, taking a risk and putting yourself out there and trying something new, even if it fails, who cares? At least you're trying something else and not sticking with something that kind of makes you go, don't really like it, And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I never ever release anything that I don't love.
Right.
If I don't love it, if I don't feel that it was right, I won't release it. I just won't.
I think that's
I'd rather have
idea.
no show than a good show. I'd rather have a good show than no. No, you know what I meant.
I do know what you mean. You'd rather put something good out than not. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you know what I meant.
You'd rather have nothing. Yes.
Yeah.
We got there in the end. It's fine.
I've never claimed to be the smartest person in the world.
Your Twitter bio says you're dumb as toast, which I think is just terrible. You're not dumb.
Listen, I know stuff about wrestling, and I know stuff about, well, that's about it really. And, well, no, that's about it.
At least you're honest. What an adorable person. All right, Joshy. As you're looking forward in this year that seems like a decade, and as you look for the rest of it, and then maybe into 2021, as we're wrapping up here, tell us, what are we looking forward to for the Josh Robinson00 Network?
It's a boring answer, and I apologize, but just continuing to grow, continuing to do things that are kind of just a little bit different. There's a lot of podcasts in the world, and they can all blend into one bubble if you don't do something different. So, toying with different ideas, talking about stuff that's kind of like, I've always been like, I'll talk about stuff that's a little bit uncomfortable to talk about. I'm not fussed with doing that. It's called real life. People have conversations about things and having different opinions on and just talking with different people. I just want to continue to grow as much as I can. And then just expanding onto things like Twitch and YouTube and doing different things and just, again, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Oh, it's exciting. I think that it's onwards and upwards from here. And I think that, people are going to kind of hop on board. They've been excited for what you have been dropping. And I know as you move forward and as we move forward through this year, we're going to be looking for you for some fun. You know what I'm saying?
let's just get out of this year, and that'd be we've somehow got to get to the end of this year, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, to be completely honest.
We'll get there. It's going to be a slow thing, but you know what? Everybody listening, you know that you could check out my boy Josh. If you need some positivity, he's where it's at. Thank God. So in this dark well of abyss, you know where to go.
That's a great word to describe
the abyss.
Just 2020. You know, it's really weird. When we started off this year, I remember having conversations with you, Queen, about going, 2020 is going to be our year. We're going to fucking own this.
Yeah, we are. We don't know
shit. And then I've never been more wrong about something in my entire life. I've never felt more like, oh man, I was wrong about that. I've been wrong about some things in my life, but never as wrong as saying 2020 will be our year.
Yeah, well, nope. That would be a negative. So we'll aim for 2021. How about that?
Yeah, all right. You know what we should have really done when that abominable game came out last year, that WWE 2K20 crap came out. We should have took that as a sign. We should have been like, all right, maybe let's just not go to 2020 and we'll be fine. But we didn't listen. Maybe 2K were actually doing us a solid and trying to warn us.
Maybe they were. Maybe it was the precursor with those freaking glitches.
Every time you did something crashed, and that feels like what happens in 2020.
It does. But thank goodness we have some good things. And for people listening who have listened to your little story here for just this brief 30 minutes, I want to say thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to Josh for coming on to have this quick little chat with me to talk all about himself and this wonderful network that he runs, obviously. And Joshy, for people who don't know you, that might be listening to this for the first time, you got to tell them where they can get all of your dope shows and all of course, your social media info.
Well, the easiest place to find everything that I'm doing is Twitter, at Josh Robinson00. All of my links are in my bio to all my podcasts. You can find, it's one feed, by the way, for the network. You get one feed, and you get all my shows. It's available everywhere you get podcasts. You can go to my YouTube. Josh Robinson00 is where you find me everywhere but Instagram, because someone had that damn name. So it's Josh Robinson and the letter. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I post everything on Twitter, so that's where you kind of find me. If you want to follow me on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Josh Robinson00. YouTube, the same thing, but YouTube instead of Twitch, of course. And yeah, you can just kind of chit chat with me about whatever you want. I post about a lot of random crap on Twitter, so trust me. It's Iconics, it's Paramore and Hands Like Houses, and it's Giddy, really. That's really my loves. I love my cat more than I love wrestling, which is crazy.
Which is a statement, let me tell you.
It's the only thing in the world I love more than the Iconics is my damn piece of crap cat.
Poor Giddy.
She's such an absolute just horror story. She just stares at me like she wants me to die. She's staring at me right now, and she's just like, yeah. You know that cat look. You know what I'm talking about, Queen. You know that cat look that just think they're better than you. She is, but that's not the point.
She is, and she knows that she is, which makes it worse.
Yeah, you go up to her and you're like, you're so beautiful, Giddy. And she's like, I know. Go away.
See, that's where your gimmick comes from. Now we know.
It must be.
Really
I must get that vibe. Yeah, it must be that vibe. She runs the house, and I'm her peasant, I guess.
I guess so. Well, what a treasure and delight, Josh. What a treasure and delight she is.
So yeah, follow me on Twitter, Josh Robinson00, and you can find all that kind of talk to me about music. Queen knows I give Queen a song every single day, and I will do it until the day I die, because I love Queen and I love spreading joy about the music I'm listening to. And I give her all. Don't I, Queen? I give you Ariana Grande. I give you Hands Like Houses. I give you
everything.
Paramore. And you just go, and Queen is a absolute gem and has a listen every single day. She gets to start a day with a different song.
That's right. I wake up, I look at my Twitter, and there's a notification. It's my favorite thing ever. Other than when you say, hey, Kayla. Those are my two favorite things.
Hey, Kayla!
Ah, love it. So I listen to this song every day, and they're all bangers. And like, not that I'm surprised, but
I give you slappers.
you really do. You really do. And the best part about it, side note, on our way out here, Josh and I have a playlist called Absolute Bangers, and let me tell you, I have not stopped listening to it.
Oh, that's all I listen to. It's just my go-to playlist. You see this? I add lots of TikTok songs in there because we're both TikTok
I did
fans.
see that.
We love a good TikTok. And you add stuff, I add stuff, and we always kind of come to an agreement that they all just slap hard.
Yep. It's amazing. We have great taste.
I got a nice song. I got a nice song for you tonight, by the way. So just wait.
Well, thank you so much again, Josh. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you chit-chatting. And for everyone listening, listen, right now, shit sucks. And I get that. But let's try to do our best to be the best possible version of ourselves that we can. The more good we put out into the universe, the more good will return. And that is something that we need right now. So please, as always, enjoy the rest of your day and continue to be kind to one another.